As a die-hard Marvel fan, I went to see Captain Marvel on opening night. I was ready. I had my popcorn, my soda, and my hot dog. Hell, I even had a biology midterm the next day and I said fuck it and decided to go watch the movie because it was freaking Marvel. And my reaction after seeing the credits roll was, what? But after seeing the movie a second time, I came to a surprising conclusion. Captain Marvel is an actual decent MCU film that is not as bad as people say it is. Every time I hear someone talk about Captain Marvel, I notice that the most common response is disappointment. Let's pause for a moment. I am not going to sit here and act as a fanboy and say that this movie is the next Guardians of the Galaxy or even reaches the level of quality of Winter Soldier or Ragnarok. Captain Marvel feels more like it belongs to the Phase 1 movies where Marvel was just beginning to crack up the formula for success. Captain Marvel showcases the same flaws that made Iron Man 2, The Incredible Hulk, Thor, and Captain America feel more down to earth and less impressive compared to their sequels. It felt more like a step backwards for Marvel, seeing how they were able to pump a good movie after another. Captain Marvel suffers from a predictable and basic storyline. The cinematography looks simple. The screenplay felt a bit awkward at times and poorly written in others. The villains fell flat for me knowing the potential they had. And in general, the film tries to find its own style, but it ends feeling like a wannabe James Gunn Guardians flick. But even with all these apparent and huge flaws, Captain Marvel remains entertaining. Why? Oh, and spoilers, by the way. I think one of the best elements of the film is Brie Larson as Carol Danvers. She is a great actress that does justice to the character by showing the physical strength that Carol possesses in such a natural way. When she is required to be vulnerable, she manages to turn off Carol's warrior side and becomes human with such ease. She nails Carol's sarcastic sense of humor, and I can't wait to see her face toe-to-toe with characters like Tony Stark and Rocket Raccoon. But the character of Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, it's a different story. At first, I found Carol trying so hard to be funny and witty, like at the beginning where she and Yon-Rogg are having a really expository conversation which does not feel natural or even that interesting. Carol is trying to be funny and likable, but since we do not know anything about her, she just comes up as yet another Marvel character. You see, the first act of the movie is the one that drags on the most, because we are constantly being told that Carol is weak because of her emotions, and that's it. There is not a moment in the first 20 minutes where we learn anything substantial about who Carol is or what motivates her. This problem is more noticeable when we are introduced to the Star Force team. The dialogue between these characters felt flat and does not really add up too much to the table. They decide to approach this camaraderie from a comical aspect by telling a joke, and having all the characters jump in and say something funny. This only created more confusion because all the team members felt the same, and they ended up being empty shells used to fill a space that needed to be filled. The Star Force team is sent on a mission, and honestly, I could care less because I do not have any emotional attachment to any of the characters at this point. After 5 minutes of so-called action, Carol gets captured by the Skrulls, and it is at this point where I felt the movie and Carol got better. The fight sequence where she has to fend Skrulls with her hands being trapped under restraints really showed Carol's physicality, and it demonstrated that Carol can fight pretty well without her abilities. And it is at the point where she crash lands on Earth that the movie finds its footing and becomes enjoyable. When Carol meets Nick Fury, we finally get to see Carol on a different light. She isn't the same character that we first met on Hala. She is now someone new and fresh. She finally finds her own style and makes it her own. Another thing that makes Captain Marvel great is her relationship with Maria Rambeau and her daughter Monica. The interactions we get between them, although short, develops Carol's human side a bit. We get to know more about her past and why she is the way she is. But apart from the confusing little flashbacks we get and the pictures that Monica keeps, we don't really get to know that much more about Carol, and that is a huge problem. In the movie, her motivation is figuring out who she is. Quite literally, if you may ask. But the movie never gives her something else to make her stand out or feel more human. For example, Tony Stark is a man living with the guilt of creating weapons of mass destruction. Steve Rogers is a man who wants to stand up for the little guy and truth. There's not a single defining motivation that I can associate with Captain Marvel that makes her stand out in her movie. You could say that throughout her life, people have been telling her that she is not good enough to do something, and that she has been pushed to the ground ever since she was a little girl. But the movie never explores this idea in a creative way. It just tells you that Carol is not good enough and shows you flashbacks of her falling and people telling her she sucks. We never get to see her struggle with this issue or having moments where she doubts herself. Instead, we see her comfortably using her powers all the time. But it is until the final act where she has to set herself free from the chains that are holding her down and embrace her true power. The scene is good enough for the climax, but emotionally, I didn't feel anything. I just felt it was necessary. Since we never got to actually see her struggle with the issues of her powers and understanding who she is, the emotional payoff feels bland in comparison to, say, Peter Quill finally reaching out to hold his mother's hand. And to make matters worse, then we have the Superman complex. When you have a character that powerful and indestructible, it is very hard to show any major weakness. You may say that Superman does have one fatal weakness, which is kryptonite, but you'd be wrong. Superman may be physically weakened by kryptonite, but what makes him a true hero is willing to sacrifice everything he has to save life. Putting people in danger is what villains do to Superman, because they know that he will always choose life over anything. His motivation is not based on proving something to anyone. It is based on human life. Superman's main goal is not stopping bad guys. It's protecting the innocent. That is why scenes like these are so powerful and emotional. They place our hero in an almost near impossible scenario that would most likely kill them, but they push through the pain and use everything they have to save innocent people, even if it means trading their own lives for others. Captain Marvel is almost never faced with this decision, except for one quick scene where she hesitates to help Nick Fury because he sold her out to S.H.I.E.L.D. But in the end, she decides to help him. After that, there is not one moment where she is presented with this decision to save lives. Later on, she is presented as the literal embodiment of a god. Like, she goes full Super Saiyan mode and it looks amazing. But when she starts destroying the ships of Ronan, I couldn't help but think of this.
At the foot of the tower, with me hardy master and organs.
I'm not saying that she is perfect, because throughout the movie we see her being pushed to the ground and being repeatedly told that her emotions make her weak. And by the end of the movie, we get a really cool emotional payoff by seeing her stand up. But apart from that, her character doesn't feel mortal, which removes the sentiment of worrying for her life. But you know what, I think that's enough mumbling about Captain Marvel, so let's return to the good stuff. Nick Fury. He had some of the most interesting interactions and relationships with Carol, and his character was hilarious, in a very Nick Fury-esque style. In a way, this serves as his origin story too, as we get to see a rookie Nick Fury venturing himself into the world of superheroes and aliens. It also serves to cement the beginnings of an idea to bring together a group of remarkable people to fight the battles that we never could. Jesus, what an awesome line. Now let's talk about the Skrulls. In the comics, the Skrulls are a super dangerous alien race that have actually tried to take over the Earth and infiltrate themselves by shapeshifting into famous heroes. Secret invasion. They had so much potential to be the next big threat for the Avengers, but this movie decided to dumb them down and reduce them to the Mandarin level of bad. I swear that even though Ben Mendelsohn did a terrific job as Talos, there's one scene in particular where he's basically Trevor Slattery in Iron Man 3. Hell, he even sounds like him. But I like the approach that Captain Marvel took to telling the Skrull stories. In the movie, the group led by Talos are actually trying to rescue Talos' family, and by the end of the second act, they actually become the good guys. I enjoyed the fact that they added depth to Talos' villain, as we understand why he kills and does what he does to save his family. But making the Skrulls good in the movie took out the scariness factor and the threat that they posed. I hope that in a second Captain Marvel film, or even an Avengers film, we get to see a different faction of the Skrulls and watch a group that actually wants to conquer the Earth in a more violent way. We haven't seen the full potentials of the Skrulls, and I hope Marvel does not waste them like they have with other villains in the past. And speaking of villains, Jude Law plays Yon-Rogg, Carol's mentor figure and the true villain of the story. Yon-Rogg falls on the villains list as one of the worst villains ever. He has no character development, we do not get to see anything remotely pointing to the fact that we should fear him, and he is nowhere to be found in the story. He's literally there just to set up an underdeveloped plot point that will be spread unevenly throughout the story just to have an emotional, empowering moment with Carol at the end of the movie. Even with a disappointing villain, no emotional struggle, or true consequences from Carol's actions, and some of the worst flashback expository scenes I've ever seen, Captain Marvel still manages to entertain me. Why? Because it is fun. I feel that Captain Marvel accomplishes being a good MCU film that fits nicely in the ever-expanding universe. It is not revolutionary, and it is not spectacular, but as a Marvel film, it's fun. I knew that the movie wasn't good, but that didn't stop me from having a good time. I was laughing, I was cheering, and I was just watching in amazement how the MCU continues to expand 21 movies later. Captain Marvel may have been an okay Marvel film, but it opens up a new and exciting road for future entries that will benefit from this new start to the MCU. If there is one thing you can take away from this video is this: do not listen to the haters. You should be able to go blindly into this film without knowing any of the controversy surrounding the film and having a damn good time. So please, do yourself a favor and see this movie with an open mind. You won't regret it. But what if the actual Flerken was the Carol Avenger Danvers nickname reveal that gave the Avengers Protocol its official name? It's a cool scene, and it made us hear the Avengers theme one last time before the big finale. But I just felt Han receives his name in Solo vibes in that scene.
Solo. Approved.
Disney sure loves being cheesy.